Have you ever walked into a room thinking you were about to be recognized, only to discover you'd been replaced? I'm Callie Brennan, and that day, that should have been my career pinnacle, changed everything for me, and for the company I once believed. In the morning had started like any other Tuesday. I woke before my alarm, mentally rehearsing the talking points I'd prepared for my salary review. 6 years at Datalytics had taught me to come over-prepared, especially when asking for what I deserved. As head of client development, I'd built relationships with our biggest accounts from scratch, personally salvaging the Axis Pharmaceuticals contract just 3 months prior when they were on the verge of walking. That save alone had protected nearly 18% of our annual revenue. My husband Paul had made me breakfast, a rare treat on a weekday, and kissed me goodbye with a whispered, "Get that raise." Our daughter Emma had drawn a little stick figure of me with "Boss Lady" written in her wobbly handwriting. I'd tucked it into my portfolio right behind my accomplishment summary. A good luck charm. The Portland rain was coming down in sheets as I pulled into the parking garage, but even that couldn't dampen my spirits. I'd earned this. The numbers proved it. My client retention rate was 94% in an industry that averaged 71%. My team consistently delivered results that exceeded projections. After taking over the Killian Foods account from the brink of cancellation, I'd not only stabilized it, but grown it by 40% year. Conference Room 4A was where all the significant company meetings happened, where we celebrated big wins and navigated challenging transitions. I'd spent countless hours in that room. But this meeting felt different. This was about my future, my worth, my place in the company I'd helped build. When I saw Janet already seated at the table with Ethan Carr, our recently hired VP from our competitor Pinnacle North, a flutter of unease rippled through me. Janet had been my direct supervisor for 4 years, and more than that, she'd become a friend. We'd celebrated birthdays together, commiserated over difficult clients, even vacationed with our families the previous summer. She'd been the one to hint that this review would finally bring the recognition I'd been working toward. "Morning, Callie," Janet said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Take a seat." The folder in front of her was closed. No salary worksheets visible. No promotion paperwork ready for signatures. Just a thin manila folder that seemed too insubstantial for good news. "Callie, thanks for coming in," Ethan began, though it wasn't as if I had a choice. His voice had that practiced smoothness of someone who had delivered uncomfortable news many times before. "We've been reviewing the organizational structure, and we're making some adjustments to streamline our client services division." Janet wouldn't meet my eyes. She kept readjusting her pen on the table. "As you know, we're implementing a new account management approach," Ethan continued. "And as part of that restructure, we're redistributing responsibilities across the team." Something cold settled in my stomach. This wasn't a salary review. This was something else entirely. "Your role as head of client development is being," he paused, searching for the right corporate euphemism, "repositioned. Going forward, you'll be taking on the role of client liaison specialist, reporting to Morgan Chen." Morgan, the same Morgan I'd hired as an intern 3 years ago. The same Morgan I'd personally trained and mentored. "I don't understand," I said, my voice steady, despite the earthquake happening inside me. "I'm being demoted during what was supposed to be my raise review." Janet finally looked up. "It's not a demotion, Callie. It's a lateral move that allows you to focus on what you do best, building relationships. The strategic decisions will just be handled at a different level now by Morgan, I stated flatly. Morgan will be overseeing the client portfolio management, Ethan confirmed. Your expertise will still be valued in maintaining the day-to-day client satisfaction and my compensation, I asked, though I already knew the answer. There will be an adjustment to reflect the revised responsibilities, Ethan said, sliding a paper across the table. The new structure comes with a different compensation band. I looked down at the number, a 23% reduction. 6 years of building the client base, of late nights and early mornings, of flights caught on my daughter's birthdays and holidays, worked through to keep clients happy. All of it had just been devalued by nearly a quarter. Why? I asked simply. The company is evolving, Ethan replied with practiced ease. We need a unified approach to client management that aligns with our new strategic direction. I looked at Janet, searching for some explanation, some acknowledgement of the betrayal. She only offered a tight smile and said, "This isn't personal, Callie, it's business." But it was personal. It had to be. There was no business logic to removing the person who had secured and maintained relationships with our 5 largest clients, who had consistently exceeded targets, who knew the intricate details of each account's needs and histories. When does this take effect? I asked, surprised at how calm I sounded. Immediately, Ethan replied. Morgan will be conducting transition meetings with each of your major accounts starting tomorrow. We'd like you to attend to help facilitate the handover. To smile and pretend this made sense, to reassure my clients, the people who trusted me, who renewed contracts because of my work, that being pushed aside was somehow in their best interest. I'll need some time to process this, I said, standing up. Neither of them tried to stop me. The paperwork will be in your inbox, Janet called after me. We'll need your signed acknowledgement by end of day. I walked out of that conference room, with my back straight and my head high. 6 years of professional poise didn't desert me until I reached my car in the parking garage. Only then, in the privacy of my Honda Accord, did I allow myself to break. The tears came hot and fast, accompanied by gasping breaths that seemed to burn my lungs. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, trying to anchor myself in the storm of emotions. Shock gave way to hurt, which quickly transformed into a searing anger that made my hands shake. I thought about all I had sacrificed. For Demoted, the emergency flight to Kylie Foods headquarters, when their CEO had concerns about our analytics platform. The countless times I'd stepped away from family dinners to take client calls. Emma's 4th birthday party that I'd missed because I was presenting at Petrolink's annual strategy session. The entire Christmas holiday I'd worked through to keep Maura from jumping to a competitor. My phone buzzed with a text from Leo, one of the analysts on my team. Is it true you're off all the major accounts? News traveled fast. I couldn't bring myself to reply. Another notification popped up, an email from Janet. She had meant to forward something to Ethan, but had accidentally included me in the chain. The subject line read, Client Control Strategy, Phase 1 Complete. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Ethan Callie has been neutralized as discussed. She's been removed from all strategic decision-making for the key accounts. As anticipated, she won't push back significantly. She's too invested in her professional reputation to make waves. The holdout asset is now under control. Proceeding with Phase 2 rollout of the new pricing structure next week. Neutralized asset control. The words swam before my eyes, clinical and cold. I wasn't a valued team member with 6 years of dedication. I was an obstacle to be removed, a holdout asset to be controlled. I sat in that parking garage for what felt like hours. The rain drumming on my car roof, creating a soundtrack to my unraveling career. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not just the demotion or the pay cut, but the calculated nature of it all. They had planned this, disgusted me as if I were a problem to solve, rather than a person who had given everything to the company. When I finally started the car, a strange calm had settled over me. Not acceptance, something else entirely. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. I drove home in a trance. My mind already 3 steps ahead of my feelings. By the time I walked through my front door, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Paul took one look at my face and knew something. These people deserved to know that I would no longer be handling their accounts, that the person they had trusted and worked with for years was gone. I hit send. What I didn't realize was that Janet was still at her desk, working late. She had the company email system set to alert her whenever certain key clients were contacted. The moment my email went out, she saw it. And more importantly, she saw the BCC list that had been automatically logged in the system. She called me immediately. I let it go to voicemail. She texted, "Callie, what have you done?" I turned off my phone. That night, I slept better than I had in years. As if a weight I hadn't even recognized had been lifted from my shoulders. Morning came with the gentle light of early summer filtering through our bedroom curtains. I allowed myself the luxury of waking slowly, no alarm rushing me toward another day of corporate politics and client appeasement. I felt oddly light despite the uncertainty that stretched before me. When I finally reached for my phone and turned it on, it exploded with notifications. 47 texts, 23 missed calls, 39 emails, messages from Janet, from Ethan, from HR, from Martin Spears, the CEO I'd spoken to maybe 3 times in 6 years, and messages from every single one of the clients I'd be CC'd. Marcus Keelian, just heard the news. Call me, ASAP. Not moving forward with Datalytics without you. Diana Petra Kelly. Kali, what's happening? We're putting all services on pause until we speak. Raj Patel, if you're not our lead, we're reevaluating our entire data analytics partnership. Victoria. Morse, just got off the phone with Janet. She's in damage control mode. What happened? And most surprisingly, a photo message from James Greenwood, coup of Greenbridge Trust, showing him signing paperwork with the logo of Pinnacle North Datalytics, biggest competitor, clearly visible in the upper corner. The caption: read, breakfast meeting, new chapter. They've been courting us for months. Your exit was the tipping point. I hadn't asked any of them to leave Datalytics. I hadn't suggested they should follow me or punish the company. I had simply informed them I was gone, and they had drawn their own conclusions. As I scrolled through the messages, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Martin Spears, CEO of Datalytics. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Callie. He began, without preamble, his voice carrying the strained politeness of someone trying to contain a crisis. We need to talk about yesterday's misunderstanding. It didn't seem like a misunderstanding to me, I replied calmly. It was quite clearly explained that my position was being eliminated and I was being demoted. There's been a miscommunication within the leadership team. He said Ethan overstepped in that meeting. The changes he proposed haven't been fully approved by the executive committee. The backpedaling was almost impressive. Is that so? We'd like you to come back in today to discuss your actual role, which should absolutely reflect your value to the company as head of strategic client partnerships with a substantial compensation. adjustment to recognize your contributions. I couldn't help but laugh softly. So, yesterday I was being demoted with a pay cut, and today I'm being promoted with a raise. Yesterday was a mistake, Martin insisted. One we're eager to correct. What changed between yesterday and today, Martin? I asked, knowing full well what the answer was. The pause told me everything. We've heard some concerns from a few clients. He finally admitted a few. Another pause. Look, Kali, you've built strong relationships with our top accounts. That's exactly why we need you on the team. I'm prepared to offer a 15% increase on your current salary, plus a retention bonus of $20,000 if you come in today and help stabilize the situation. 6 years I had worked for this company, consistently delivering results above expectations. 6 years I had asked for appropriate compensation and been told that budgets were tight, that next year would be better, that I needed to be patient. Now, with the threat of losing major clients, they could suddenly find room in the budget for both a raise and a substantial bonus. If that offer had come 24 hours earlier, I might have accepted it, I said. But now, I've already let go, Kali. Be reasonable. You have a non-compete clause in your contract. You can't just walk away and take our clients with you. I smiled to myself, thinking of the hours I'd spent reviewing my employment contract the night before. You might want to check Clause 9.3b of my original employment agreement. Martin, any demotion or reduction in compensation without written consent immediately voids the non-compete provisions. I paused to let that sink in. Ethan and Janet handed me my freedom yesterday. I'm just accepting it today. The silence on the other end of the line stretched out. Finally, Martin said, "What do you want, Kali? Name your price." "That's just it, Martin. I don't have a price anymore. Not for analytics. Good luck with your client relationships." I ended the call feeling a sense of power I hadn't experienced in years. My phone immediately began ringing again, this time with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Kali Brennan," I said. "M. Brennan, this is Mara Quinn, Deputy Director of Strategy at Pinnacle North. I understand you may be between opportunities at the moment. News traveled fast in our industry. That's one way to put it. I've had some interesting conversations this morning," Mara continued. 3 to be exact. All with companies who were until very recently exclusively working with datalytics. My breath caught. "I didn't solicit any clients to leave," I said carefully. "No one's suggesting you did," Mara replied smoothly. "But it seems your departure has created something of a reassessment among certain key accounts. I'd like to meet with you today, if possible, to discuss mutual interests." By mutual interests, she meant the clients who were suddenly in play. Clients who apparently had already been in contact with Pinnacle North. Where and when, I asked. "The Tributary Cafe, private room in the back. Noon. Come alone." Obviously, the Tributary was known for its discretion, a place where business discussions happened away from prying eyes. It was where deals were made and partnerships formed. "I'll be there." Before I could even shower, another message came through. This one from an executive assistant at Keelian Foods, confirming a delivery. 20 minutes later, a courier arrived at my door with a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Marcus Killian himself. "Kali, 6 years of partnership doesn't end with a single email. If you're joining Pinnacle, let me know. We move." Immediately, MK similar notes arrived from Petrol Link and Horizon Path before I left for my meeting with Mara. each expressing the same sentiment wherever I went. They were prepared to follow. I arrived at the Tributary Cafe 5 minutes early, dressed in my best suit, navy blue with subtle pinstripes, the one I wore for important client presentations. The hostess led me to the private room in the back without asking my name. Mara was already there, a slim folder and 2 coffee cups on the table before her. "Cal," she said, standing to shake my hand. Her grip was firm, her smile genuine. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Your timing was impeccable," I replied, taking the seat across from her. "Timing is everything in this business," she agreed, sliding one of the coffee cups toward me, black with a splash of cream. "Right, Marcus Keelian mentioned it was your preference when we spoke this morning." The casual reference to her conversation with one of my biggest former clients was deliberate a way of letting me know that the lines of communication were already open. "Let me be direct," Mara said, after I'd taken a sip. "You're not just a strategist or an account manager, Callie. You're a center of gravity. Clients orbit around you, because you've earned their trust in an industry where trust is in short supply. I worked hard to build those relationships," I acknowledged. "And Datalytics just threw that away," Mara said, shaking her head. "Their loss, potentially our gain." She opened the folder. "I'm authorized to offer you the position of Senior Vice President of Client Growth at Pinnacle North. Full authority to build your own team. Because you're the momentum now, Callie. And in this business, momentum waits for no one." I left the Tributary with the offer folder tucked into my bag and a decision to make. But first, there was something else I needed to do. I drove back to the Datalytics office. Not as an employee returning to work, not as a partner coming to negotiate, but as someone who knew their worth and was finally ready to claim it. The security guard at the front desk recognized me, of course. "Ms. Brennan, didn't expect to see you today. Heard there was some confusion yesterday." "No confusion, Mike, just clarity. I need to collect my personal items." He hesitated, clearly unsure of my status. "Let me just call up to HR." "I'm no longer an employee," I said calmly. "But I believe I'm entitled to retrieve my personal property, unless Datalytics wants to add theft to their list of poor decisions this week." Mike had known me for 6 years. He'd seen me arrive early and leave late countless times. "Go on up," he said, handing me a visitor badge. "I didn't see you." I took the elevator to the 14th floor, where the client services team occupied the East Wing. The office was unusually quiet for a workday. As I walked to my former office, I could feel eyes on me, colleagues watching with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Leo stepped out of his cubicle as I passed. "Callie," he said in a hushed tone, "everyone's talking. Is it true about Kylie and Foods and the others?" "I couldn't say," I replied. "I don't work here anymore." "They've been in crisis meetings all morning," he continued. "Janet looks like she's seen a ghost. And Ethan, Callie." Janet's voice cut through our conversation. She stood in the doorway of the conference room, her face drawn with stress. "You shouldn't be here." "I'm just collecting my things," I said, continuing toward my office. She followed me, closing the door behind us. "What you did was unprofessional," she said in a low voice. "Those clients made their own decisions. I finished for her. Just like you did when you decided I was an asset to be neutralized." Her face flushed. "You saw the email." "I did. Quite illuminating to learn how you really saw me after 6 years." Janet sank into the chair opposite my desk. "It wasn't personal." "You keep saying that. I noted as I began emptying my desk drawer into a box I'd brought. But planning someone's demotion behind their back, discussing them as an obstacle rather than a colleague, that feels pretty personal from where I'm standing. I was wrong, she admitted, surprising me. I should have fought harder for you. I knew what you brought to the team, to the company. But you didn't, I said simply. You chose the politics over the person. That's a choice you'll have to live with. The door opened without a knock, and Ethan stepped in. His confident demeanor had been replaced by barely contained panic. We need to talk, he said, ignoring Janet. The situation has escalated beyond what's reasonable. 5 major accounts, 5 have suspended services pending review. Sounds like a challenging day for client services, I remarked, continuing to pack my things. This is a deliberate attempt to damage the company, he accused. You contacted those clients directly. I informed them I was leaving. I corrected, which was a professional courtesy. What they chose to do with that information was entirely their decision. You know damn well what would happen. He snapped. Did I, or did you? When you decided to demote the person who had built relationships with those clients for 6 years, I looked him directly in the eye. Sometimes the consequences of our actions aren't what we expect. Ethan, that's a lesson worth learning. Your non-compete is void. I interrupted, pulling a document from my bag. I'd stopped by a print shop on the way over. Here's my original employment contract with the relevant section highlighted. Clause 9.3b. Any demotion or reduction in compensation without the written consent of the employee shall render the non-competition and non-solicitation provisions of this agreement immediately null and void. I slid it across to him. You tried to bury me, Ethan, but I was soil, not stone. Things grow from soil. His face darkened as he read the clause. This doesn't end here, he warned. It already has, I replied, picking up my box. For me, anyway. Good. Luck with the client calls. I hear they can be quite demanding when they're unhappy. I walked out of that office for the last time with my head high, feeling lighter with each step. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it felt full of possibility rather than obligation. By 7 o'clock the next morning, I had made my decision. I called Mara and accepted the position at Pinnacle North. By 8. I had emails from Kylie and Foods, Petrolink, Greenbridge Trust, Horizon Path, and Velmora, all confirming they had terminated their contracts with Data, effective immediately. By 9, my LinkedIn profile had exploded with notifications, including a public post from Marcus Killian that simply read, Callie Brennan was never a vendor rep. She was our solution. Proud to continue our partnership in her new venture. And by 10, I had an email from Janet. I chose wrong. You didn't deserve what happened. I hope you're building something better. If you ever need anything professionally or personally, I'm here. Some bridges shouldn't be burned, even when we've failed to maintain them properly. I didn't reply immediately. Some relationships needed time to find their new shape, but I didn't delete the email either. 2 weeks later, I sat in my new office at Pinnacle North, preparing for a video call with all 5 of my former, now current, again clients. My new email signature displayed proudly on the screen. Callie Brennan SVP, Client Growth, Callie Pinnacle North. Oh, as I waited for everyone to join the call, I reflected on how quickly everything had changed. The fear and shock of that demotion meeting seemed distant now, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and appreciation for my own value. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Emma's school play 200 p.m. for the first time in years. I wouldn't have to send Paul with apologies and promises to make it up to our daughter. I had negotiated flexibility in my new contract, something I should have fought 4 years ago. The video call connected, familiar faces appearing in squares across my screen. "Welcome to the next chapter," I said to the assembled clients. "Let's talk about building something better together." Later that afternoon, I sat in the elementary school auditorium watching Emma play the part of a talking tree in the second-grade production of The Enchanted Forest. When she spotted me in the audience, her face lit up with surprise and joy. She waved frantically from beneath her construction paper branches, and I waved back, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Some storms don't need thunder and lightning. They just need the right moment and someone brave enough to let go. In the days that followed, I built my new team at Pinnacle North, bringing over some of the best talent from Datalytics, who had reached out after my departure. Leo was my first hire. His analytical skills had always been exceptional, and his loyalty during the transition spoke volumes about his character. I implemented new client service protocols based on everything I had learned over the years, both what worked and what didn't. We created customized dashboards for each client that gave them unprecedented visibility into their data, something I had advocated for at Datalytics, but had never been given the resources to develop. The transition wasn't without challenges. There were integration issues with the new systems, personnel conflicts to navigate, and the inevitable learning curve that comes with any significant change. But there was a fundamental difference. Now I had the authority to address problems directly, without layers of approval or political considerations. 3 months into my new role, I received a message from Victoria Morse at Mora. The difference is night and day. We're seeing insights we didn't even know to look for before. That same week, Raj from Horizon Path called to increase their service package. "We want to expand what we're doing with you. The board has approved a 30% budget increase for analytics after seeing the last quarterly report. Success tasted sweeter because it was built on authentic relationships and genuine value, not corporate politics or power plays." I made sure Instead, I had flourished in new soil, putting down stronger roots and reaching higher than I ever could have in the shadow of a company that didn't value what I brought to the table. As for Janet's email, I eventually did reply months later. When the sting had faded and perspective had taken its place, some lessons are learned the hard way. Some bridges can be rebuilt with time and sincere effort. Coffee sometime. We met at the tributary, coming full circle to the place where my new chapter had begun. The conversation was awkward at first, laden with unspoken regrets and lingering hurt. But gradually we found our way to a new understanding, not as close as before. Perhaps, but authentic in a way our previous friendship had not been. "I should have stood up for you," she admitted over her second cup of coffee. "Yes," I agreed, "you should have. I was afraid," she confessed. "Afraid of losing my position, my security. Afraid of being the next one on the chopping block. Fear makes us forget what's really important," I said. "It makes us compromise in ways we never thought we would." She nodded, looking down at her cup. "The company's not the same without you." "Nothing is. Change is inevitable," I replied. "The question is whether we direct it or are directed by it." We parted with a tentative hug and a promise to stay in touch. A promise we both knew might or might not be kept. But the conversation had provided something valuable for both of us: closure. A year and a half after that fateful meeting in conference room for a Pinnacle North was thriving. My client portfolio had expanded beyond the original 5 who had followed me, growing to include some of the most prestigious companies in our sector. My team had tripled in size. Each member carefully selected, not just for their skills, but for their commitment to the client partnership philosophy I had built the division around. We had just completed our most successful quarter ever when Mara called me into her office. "You've exceeded every projection we had," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "The board is extremely pleased. The team has done exceptional work," I acknowledged. "The team you built," she pointed out, "which brings me to the reason for this meeting." She pushed a folder across her desk, reminiscent of that first meeting at the Tributary. "We're creating a new position, Chief Client Officer, reporting directly to the CEO with oversight of all client-facing divisions." I opened the folder and saw the formal offer letter with a compensation package that made even Pinnacle's generous initial offer seem modest. "You've proven that client relationships aren't just a function of the business, they are the business," Mara continued. "We want to embed that philosophy throughout the entire organization." As I considered the offer, I thought about how far I had come from that rainy day in the parking garage, tears streaming down my face as I confronted the shock of betrayal and devaluation. I thought about the lessons learned, the growth experienced, the confidence gained. "I accept," I said, closing the folder. "On one condition." Mara raised an eyebrow, "which is I want to establish a mentorship program for women in the company, particularly those who might not recognize their own value yet. I want to help them learn what took me too long to understand." Mara smiled. "Consider it done." That evening, as I shared the news with Paul over dinner, Emma listened with curious attention. "So, you're going to be like the superboss now?" she asked. I laughed. "Something like that." "Because you're good at helping people," she stated, with the simple clarity of a child. "I try to be," I said. "Like when you helped me with my science project, even though you were really busy," she continued. "You made time because it was important." Out of the mouths of babes. In that moment, I realized that the same principle that had guided my professional success, making people feel valued, heard, and important, was equally vital in every other aspect of life. The next day, I attended the weekly staff meeting, not as the SVP of client growth, but as the incoming Chief Client Officer. As I looked around the table at the faces of my colleagues, some familiar, some new, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. "I'd like to share something with all of you," I said when it was my turn to speak. 2 years ago, I was demoted during what I thought would be my raise review. It was the most professionally painful moment of my career. Surprised murmurs rippled around the table. Many knew I had come from Datalytics, but few knew the full story. What I didn't realize then was that it would also become the most transformative moment of my career. Not because of what was taken from me, but because of what it forced me to recognize my own value. I looked around the table, making eye contact with each person. "Each of you brings unique value to this company, to our clients, to our collective success. My commitment as Chief Client Officer is to ensure that value is recognized, nurtured, and rewarded. Because when people feel valued, they create value beyond measure." The room erupted in applause, spontaneous and genuine. In that moment, I knew that the painful pruning of my career had produced exactly the growth it was meant to. Not just for me, but for everyone I would now have the opportunity to lead and mentor. That night, I found a small package on my desk as I was preparing to leave. Inside was a framed quote. "Sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but you've actually been planted. There was no note, no indication of who had left it. But as I ran my fingers over the frame, I smiled, thinking of how far I had come from that dark day in the parking garage. I hadn't been buried, after all. I had been planted, and I had bloomed. In the years that followed, I would face new challenges, navigate new transitions, and celebrate new victories. But I would never again doubt my worth or allow others to define my value. That lesson, painful as it had been, was permanently etched into the foundation of who I had become. Sometimes, the most significant storms in our lives don't announce themselves with thunder and lightning. They arrive in quiet conference rooms, in unexpected emails, in moments of sudden clarity when we realize that the path we've been walking is not the only one available to us. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply let go of expectations, of fear, of the familiar comfort of where we've been, and allow ourselves to be carried to where we're meant to go next. For me, that journey began with 5 words I never expected to write. I will not be returning, and ended with 5 words I never expected to hear. You were always meant for more. The truth, as I discovered, lay somewhere in between, in the daily choice to value myself as much as I valued others, to recognize my worth even when others failed to see it, and to create space for my own growth, even when it meant leaving behind what once seemed essential. In the end, that's what transformation is. Not a single dramatic moment, but a series of choices that gradually reshape who we are and what we believe is possible. A demotion meeting becomes a doorway. A resignation email becomes a declaration of independence. A painful ending becomes the beginning of something far more beautiful than we could have imagined. And we discover that we are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we choose to respond, by the courage we find to walk away from what diminishes us, and toward what allows us to flourish. That's the story I now share with young professionals just starting their careers, with mid-career women questioning their value, with executives who have lost sight of what truly matters in the pursuit of success. It's a story that continues to evolve as I do, gaining new dimensions with each passing year and each new challenge overcome. But at its heart, it remains the same simple truth I discovered in the aftermath of that fateful meeting. You are not what others say you are. You are not the role you play, or the title you hold, or the salary you earn. You are the value you create, the relationships you build, the difference you make. And no one can take that away from you unless you let them. I almost let them. In that moment of shock and betrayal, I almost accepted their assessment of my worth, almost believed that a demotion and pay cut accurately reflected my value to the company I had helped build. But something deeper, some essential knowledge of who I was and what I had contributed, refused. You are not what they say you are. You are what you know yourself to be. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, not in defeat, but in the profound recognition of your own worth and the determination to find a place where that worth is recognized and rewarded. I did, and it made all the difference.